Okay, today we'll start Lamed Al and Amud Beis. It's about 5 lines from the top. It's Ahu Da'amalei L'Chavre. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And in this list about learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash. Learning for Shleima for my father, and also for Naftali and Muhammad. Okay, so you see what this is? 34b on towards the top. It says, there was a person that told his friend, we're talking about over here administering an oath of testimony to someone. So we have over here a plaintiff and a defendant. So the plaintiff tells the defendant, I counted out money for you, which means like I lent you money next to this in this pillar, in the street, this lamppost, this whatever. Right there, that's where I gave it to you. Amalei, I never even walked by that pillar. Also, Trey Sadi, so 2 witnesses come, and the way it gets better. Asida Bay, they testified the Hishtan Maim said that he urinated on that pillar, or next to that pillar. The witnesses come. It's, what are you saying? You were never there. You were there. Amalei, I'm sorry, I'm Rish Lakish, DNA. Rish Lakish, Shachsa Kafran. Says the guy is a liar. What happens if he's a liar? Then we can't trust him anymore, and we're going to trust the other guy that's claiming that he owes him that he lent him money, and that person owes him money. Maskif la Reb Nachman. Now that's interesting that Reb Nachman should ask Rish Lakish a question. Is it Reb Nachman? I have a Rosh Hashanah, and before it was Rish Lakish, and when it says Maskif la, it says Reb Nachman asked him. Objected
to this, objected to this.
To this. So the law is to this instead of, it would have been maskif lei. Yeah, so law would mean to this, to the statement. Maskif lei would mean to him. Okay, I get it. So maskif la Rav Nachman asks, Hi Dina Parso, this is a Persian type of logic, it's a Persian type of judgment. Mikamar mi'olam, did he say that I never went by that pillar? He means I didn't go by this pillar when you were giving me money or at this involved in giving her the money, but not like I was never at this pillar. Okay. Ikadamri, there are those that have this story a little bit different. There was a person that said to his friend, I counted out the money for you right at this pillar. He says the word mi'elam. Says, I never even went by this pillar. It's the first time I'm here. Nafka Besade, witnesses came, that he urinated on this pillar, or at this pillar. Reb Nachman says about this, not Rish Lakish. Now it's Reb Nachman, the person is an absolute liar. He's gonna end up owing the money.
We're both in the same page.
Both. No, now it's a new story. Now Rish Lakish isn't here. So it's another version of the story where it's only Rav Nachman. Amalei Rav or Rav Nachman. So Rav says to Rav Nachman, that's common. Rav is the speaker of Nachman. Kol milsad by Ramyalei de Inish Avidla Valava Daitiv. Rav says to Rav Nachman some interesting logic. He says that when something is not relevant, so then even if you do it, you don't pay attention to it. That's why it's in there. So he's saying that when the person said that I never went by this, it's because there was never anything relevant. That thing with the insurance, they sent me a letter that I was supposed to renew the insurance and I didn't, and I mentioned to you this anyway. So they had this trial. So they said, did you receive the letter that you're supposed to renew it? I said, maybe, but it wasn't. It was insignificant because these letters come and they're never significant. There's never, they said, no, it's not true. Once every 5 years, it's significant because you get one once a month. Because once every 5 years, you have to put in the information again. I said, well,
How are you supposed to?
How am I supposed to know that? You just have to say in the front. This is the one that matters. All the rest, there's another, I don't know how many of us in 5 years. Another 60 letters. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. Reb Shimon Aimer, Chayev Khan, Chayev Khan. Okay. But this takes us back to a brisa. The brisa was discussing that the only time a person would be obligated to, when he denies testimony, is if the claim that he's denying to testify about would obligate money to one of them, one of the parties, to the other party. Someone's claiming from him, someone's claiming to two witnesses, I needed to testify, and he administers an oath to them that you don't, swear that you don't know testimony, and they swear falsely. So then they're going to be now. When he says swear that you don't know testimony, that testimony has to be a type of testimony that would have obligated money, that would have been a monetary claim. We had different opinions. What's the source for that? We had the opinion of Rebbe Lezer that says we learn it from Oy, from Shvus Pikadon. It says the word Oy here. It says by Shvus Pikadon the word Oy, which means or. Then we had Rabbi Yossi Aglili, or Rabbi Akiva. He says it says Me'ela. We had Rabbi Yossi Aglili. He says it has to be the type of testimony that you can know and not see, or see and not know. Then we had Reb Shimon. This is what we're going to discuss now. Reb Shimon starts off saying, over here he's obligated if he swears falsely about the testimony. He's also obligated by the pikadon. Pikadon means a deposit. If someone deposited something by a person to watch, and comes to claim it, and the guy says, I don't know what you're talking about, so that person has to take an oath. An oath that he doesn't have it anymore, and that he wasn't negligent, the whole story with it. Now, no, only where he would be exempt if that claim is accurate. So, oh man. So Reb Shimon says he's chayav over here, and he's also chayav by a deposit. Just like by the deposit, the person's claiming money. So it's over here, it has to be a claim of money. Gemara says, and also it's a kal v'chomer. The Reb Shimon says it's also a kal v'chomer. When it came to pikadon, we said that it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if it's a relative or not a relative, or if it's someone that could testify or can't testify. If it's administered in court or out of court, none of those matter. But nevertheless, it still is a monetary claim. So over here, where everything does matter, it can only be men. It can only be in court. It can only be people that could testify. For sure, it's only going to be by a monetary claim. If by pikadon, where there's very little restrictions, there still is one restriction that it needs to be a monetary claim. Over here, where there's so many restrictions, for sure it should be only a monetary claim. The Gemara says, one second, this is not a good kal v'chomer, because pikadon is more lenient, has less restrictions, because we don't say that it applies if someone administers the oath. It's only if he takes the oath on his own. So maybe that's why it needs to be only when there's a monetary claim. But over here, it doesn't matter if someone administers the oath or he takes the oath on his own. So maybe that should be different. And also, by a pikadon, it's only if he swears falsely, unintentionally. But if he swears falsely on purpose, then the halacha is going to be different. And over here, it doesn't matter if it's on purpose or unintentionally, when it comes to testimony. The Gemara concludes, Reb Shimon concludes, well, there's a gzeir shava. Gzeir shava is, it says over here, techta means that he will sin. It says over there, techta, that means he will sin. Well, just like over here, it's talking about monetary claims, so it's over there. Okay. So we had a kal v'chomer that gets rejected, and then we have a gzeir shava. So now the Gemara says like this: Shimon chayiv kan v'chayiv b'kadon. He's chayiv here, he's chayiv by b'kadon. Okay. The Gemara now says, Machku Allah b'marava. In Eretz Yisrael, they laughed at Reb Shimon's logic. So surprised, but that's what happened.
Two short questions. We have 3 parts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry? What did they quote back to Sanhedrin? No, just tell me what it is. Oh, yeah, 17. In Sanhedrin, Machkal of Marafa, who is that? It's Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. That's Hillel's quoting to me the art scroll. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, the Gemara on Yud Zayin in Sanhedrin tells us whatever it says, Amri Marava, or who is that? Machkal of Marava, who is that? Kumpadisa Amri, who is that? It gives you a list of with the codes of who's who. And
Last question first. Picardon, you only have
yeah.
So the last point they're talking about Picardon, it's only about like it sounded like we're limiting it to monetary claims, but is that all we're talking about?
Yeah.
So what's the big deal about Picardon?
Yeah.
So I mean, why are you bringing Picardon?
No, we're just trying to say that when it comes to testimony, there could be a lot of different types of testimony, right? So we said because we're comparing it to Picardon, so just like by Picardon, it's only a monetary claim. So by the oath of testimony, it's also going to be only a monetary claim. Now you're asking, but it's only possible by Picardon to be a monetary claim. Yeah. Anyway, that's the comparison.
Okay, so that was my first. The other one is many Gemaras back, we learned about how the Jews walked in those days, how they were robed, etc., and how they, if they had to relieve themselves in the street, they would relieve themselves. And we had different places. We learned that first of all, they don't do it in the middle of the street like non-Jews. They would go off to side. But it's not this Greco-Roman picture, sculpture of a little boy doing it on a pillar, like a missile intent. So I don't understand if this guy was standing by a pillar, how a witness knew he was urinating. If it's mamish, he's got a robe on, it's on the ground. It's like you walk in the New York subway, you smell it afterwards.
You're adding in details, and then you're asking a question about it.
Well,
we don't know those details. We didn't say the position of how he was urinating. That was we're adding that in our mind. He was probably urinating like those.
No. I'm saying he could. He would urinate the way we've always mentioned. Right. So how could you have a witness to that?
Oh, it just meant that over there he went to the bathroom.
How did they know?
He said, "Please, I have to stop for a minute."
He said to the witnesses.
Yeah. So they were on their way home from a Farbrengen.
Seems to me they just say that because just to show us that it doesn't apply because it's extraneous.
Okay.
Right.
Back to the text.
Yeah. Said to the witnesses, excuse me.
He didn't. It doesn't mean that he had to have said that. It was understood. If you were there, you would have realized. Okay. My chucha, the Gemara asks, okay, if they laughed at what Reb Shimon said in Eretz Yisrael, what did they laugh about? What was a joke? What did they not accept? What did they not accept? Biktani, it was stuff like this. When we were rejecting the Kal V'Chaimer, that if by Pikadon it needs to be only a monetary claims, for sure, by testimony it's monetary. We said 1 second. By Pikadon, we don't say, by the deposit, we don't say that when someone is administering an oath, it's just like he took the oath by himself. We also don't say that if it was done intentionally, it's just like it was done unintentionally. We only say that by Yedus. So you can't do a comparison. It says Michti. Let's see. Or now that Mushba mi piatzmai beidus Reb Shimon minole. How does Reb Shimon know that an oath could be administered and he doesn't have to take the oath on his own. When an oath is administered, person that wants the other person to take the oath, he says, "I'm making you swear that," and the person responds, "Amen." How do we know that that's possible? It doesn't need to be said on his own. He says, "Well, Gamar mipikadin." No, I'm sorry. How do we know that he takes an oath on his own? How do we know that he takes an oath on his own? That he doesn't need to be administered. He said, "Well, that we learned from pikadin." So it says pikadin nami mush piachem negum meyedus. So if I learn that an oath is taken on his own from pikadin, it's a testimony that he can take the oath on his own. So now we should learn the other way. We should say, once you do a comparison like this, so it goes both ways. You should say also that by pikadin, the person that's demanding could administer the oath. Another person responds, "Amen." Okay. The Gemara says, "Amai chucha." He says, "Why is that a problem? Why is that something to laugh about?" Dilma Rab Shimon bekal v'chemer ma'isla mipiacherim chayev mipias melakoskin. How do you know? We're making it look like there's a gzeir shava here. And gzeir shava means that there's a verbal analogy. It says here this word, it says here this word. So we're going to compare the two, and then the halachas of this one go to that one, the halachas of that one go to this one. It says maybe it's just the kal v'chemer. And the kal v'chemer goes like this. It says that if by the testimony, if someone can administer an oath, he doesn't even have to say it himself. All he has to do is say amen. For sure, if he says the whole oath, for sure he's going to be chayav. Nothing to do with pikadin. I didn't learn why am I chayav by testimony because I learned it from pikadin. No, by testimony itself. I know that if someone administers the oath, I'm going to be chayav. So if someone administers it, I'm chayav. For sure, if I do it on my own, I'm going to be chayav. He lies about it, right? Ella, now we're looking for a new problem. What we're doing here is we're searching for a problem.
Didn't they try to cover home before?
You're asking a very complicated question. Hill is asking that, but then they have a Kalvachaimer and then they had Example Shava. The Gemara over here is rejecting different parts of each one. It's hard to know where exactly we're holding and what we're thinking at each point. At each point, we're asking, but at this point of Reb Shimon, what was he thinking? You get what I'm saying? To learn this Gemara properly, you would have to go through it very carefully, analyzing. Does the Gemara accept the Gzeir Shav at this point? Or does the Gemara not? That's that's a different way of learning. That's not a Daf Yomi. Go to yeshiva a week or two to study that. Rather, it must be about when we said that intentional is the same as unintentional. Diktani, because it was taught. He said that when it comes to this is how we reject Kal V'Chaimer. So when it comes to the deposit, we say that we don't say that someone that takes an oath, someone that's administered an oath, is just like he took it on his own. And we also don't say that intentional is like unintentional. It says michti. How do we know that if someone intentionally lies by an oath, he has the same sacrifice that he has to bring when it comes to testimony as if he did it unintentionally? Usually unintentional is the sacrifice. Here, even intentional is, how do we know that? Because it doesn't say the word and it was concealed from him. In those sections of the Torah where it's discussing the oath and other things, it says and it was concealed. Over here, it doesn't say concealed, which means that even if it's intentional, he's still going to be chayav. So achinami, guess what? By the pikadon, like Siv Beivin Elam, it doesn't say that it was concealed. Now, it doesn't, it's a totally different section of the Torah. It's not part of, anyway, whatever the case is, it doesn't say concealed. So the same halacha should apply. If it doesn't say concealed, we should say that even intentional should be the Amalu Rav Huna says, that's the question. My chucha, why is that a laughter? Dilma mezid the lav kishagim because meila Reb Shimon Gamla. Maybe Reb Shimon learns it from Meila. Now the halacha of Meila is if someone makes personal use from something that belongs to consecrated items. And over there it says a mala by mal. Mal means a trespass. He does say he uses something that he wasn't supposed to. It belonged to the temple, and he used it for his own. And also, when it comes to the pikadon, it also says mala by mal. He trespasses, and he maybe takes something that was deposited by him. He takes it for himself. That's also called a trespass. So by Me'ila, when it comes to those special laws of Me'ila, if someone uses something that belongs to the temple, it's only if he uses it b'shaygi. If he uses it b'mezid, then the halachas don't apply. There's a different punishment. It's not that he doesn't have to bring the carbon and all of that. It's a different status. So maybe we'll say that just like by pikadon it says me'ila, and just like by me'ila it says me'ila, of course. So I'll say that the halachas of me'ila are going to apply to pikadon. That over there there's a difference between intentional and unintentional. So it's over here there's a difference between intentional and unintentional. So in other words, I have a source. We're asking what's your source that intentional is the same as unintentional because it doesn't say vanelam? Well, guess what? By pikadon it also doesn't say vanelam that it was concealed. It says, well, I know it doesn't say it, but I have an independent source from Me'ila that tells me that there is a difference between it. It says, V'hainu chucha. It says, well, guess what? Okay, so we're asking, why was this a joke? Why was this a laughter? Reb Shimon has a good point because he learns from Me'ila. He says, no. Hainu chucha ad gamri le'Me'ila nigmal edus. Why is he learning from Me'ila? Let him learn from edus. If he learns from Me'ila, then there's a distinction between intentional and unintentional. Learns from Edus, then intentional and unintentional are the same. Why do you choose that one? Learn from this one. Okay, so now we're going to get into this. Which one is closer? Which one is more to learn? Mistabra, the Gemara answers, Me'ila havalela melech. You probably should have learned from Me'ila, Shekain Me'ila, because it says the word Me'ila by Pikadon, and it says the word Me'ila by Me'ila. So that's very close. It says Adarabba, Me'idus havalela melech. On the contrary, you should have learned from testimony. Shekain techta mitechta. It says over there that he will sin. What does it say? That you will sin? He will sin. Will sin. Thanks. So it says over there, techta will sin. And it also says by pikadon and techta that will sin. So therefore, we're going to learn from pikadon. Because we're going to learn pikadon rather from edus, from testimony. It says mistabra mi'ila havalela melech. No, it's better to learn from me'ila, more logical. Shekain me'ila. First of all, it says the word me'ila. Also, bakol. Also, it applies to all people. It's not just specific people that are able to testify in court. We're talking about learning pikadon, the deposit from me'ila. But edus is only in court. It's only by people that can testify in court. Nana, talking about someone that takes benefit from something from hektish, or someone that takes benefit from an item that doesn't belong to him. The kavua, the sacrifice that you bring, if he violates one of those, either me'ila is a asham, and if he swears falsely by the deposit, it's also an asham. Claimish, he has to pay an extra fifth if he had personal use from it, or there if he took it for himself. And va'asham, and he has to bring a carbon asham. So there's so many things that are comparable when it comes to me'ila. There's 6 things, 6 comparisons. It says Adarabba. On the contrary, we should have learned from testimony. Shekain techta, which means techta. It says the word techta. Hedyait, we're not talking about hektish. By me'ila, we're talking about hektish. That's a big comparison, big contrast. B'shvua, dealing with an oath. Me'ila is not dealing with an oath. Me'ila is just talking about he took the money from the pushka and he spent it. It's not an oath. There's a claim and there's a denial. Right? Someone's claiming something and he's denying it. By both of those. Ayin means, and it has the word oy. Not as in woe, but as in or. It says by both of those or by the oath. It said what was the or? It said he saw or he knew. By the pikadon it says or he loaned or he stole, or it's all of those. Okay. My answer is Hanach Nefishin. Me'ila is more. It's a close game, but it's 6-5, 5-6, right? Did they say it in the game? 5-6, 6-5. Okay. So Me'ila has 6 things, and Edis only has 5. So okay, Elamai Chucha. If we're left with this that we learn from Me'ila, then why is there any joke over here? This is a Kiasura Papa, Rafuna Breda Rav Yishum Beirav. Rav Papa and Rafuna Breda Yeshua came from the yeshiva. Can't be Beirav. Can't be they came from the yeshiva of Rav. They're 4 generations later than Rav. Beirav means from the yeshiva. Doesn't from the academy. Doesn't have to be the house of Rav. Beirav, it's from the yeshiva.
Translate as.
Hey, Rav means any yeshiva. Sometimes it means Rav specifically. Over here, it just means yeshiva. Hainu chucha. This is the following is the joke that is the what to laugh about Reb Shimon's logic. Michti. Reb Shimon Gzeir Shava Gomer. Reb Shimon learns from Gzeir Shava. Why did he even ask the question that you can't compare him? How can you compare? This is different than that. What do you mean? He has Gzeir Shava.
Wait, that's his name. Contemporary of Rav Papa is Rav Huna the Rav Yoshua.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, Rav Papa and Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua are like fourth, fifth generation Amirai. Yes.
Down.
So they're way below Rav. So
No,
because when
because
they
the
came
first
from
Rav Huna is.
oh, that's a different Rav Huna.
Right, that's what.
That's a different Rav Huna. That's a major student of Rav.
Right. Interesting.
So if there's a Gzeir Shava, then why is he mixing in that there's a contrast? I have a Gzeir Shava that compares them. It says, "My chucha dilma ki parach mikami to take the Gzeir Shava basa the kamal Gzeir Shava leipara." Maybe the contrast that we have here between testimony and pikadon is only before the Gzeir Shava came in. Once he learned the Gzeir Shava, heard it from his teacher or whatever, changed his mind. And now the halachas of them are the same. Where it says, V'loi, that you mean to tell me that after the Gzeir Shava, he wouldn't have said that contrast? V'amalu Rava Barisi l'Rabbanan, but Rava Barisi said to Rabban, Man tanashvasa b'kadon le'nitin l'zedain l'kapara. Who's the one that taught that if someone takes an intentional false oath about a deposit, that he doesn't get an atonement with a sacrifice? Who taught that? Reb Shimon. 1 second. Shimon has a Gzeir Shava that he compared Shavuos Eidos to the testimony to the deposit. If he did that comparison, then the halacha should be the same. Why are we saying that unintentional is only going to get the halacha, but intentional is not? Well, the Gemara says, Dilma Maseches Shavuos Daf. Maybe you're right. Really, I compare testimony to the deposit, and the halachas are the same. However, with that one detail, when it came to intentional versus unintentional, that one detail, I have an external source that teaches me that pikadon is different because I learned from Me'ila. Me'ila tells me that it has to be unintentional and not intentional. The Hanach Nefishin, and that's why I learned from Me'ila, because I had more similarities to Me'ila than the other way. Abel Mushpak and Nishba Leiparach. When it comes to the difference between the oath being administered or taking the oath on your own, that Reb Shimon would agree is now equal by both of them because there's a Gzeir Shava. So the Gemara says, "V'tihad Eidos v'tikun pikadon." So then let us learn Eidos from pikadon. Mezid lav k'shoigig, ma pikadon shoigig again mezid loy. Af Eidos shoigig mezid loy. Kechad the alef pikadon ne'meila. Just like I learn pikadon from Me'ila, we're going to do like 2 steps here. There's a difference between a shogeg and a mezid by Me'ila. That comes and teach me to pikadon that there's a difference between a shogeg and a mezid, intentional or unintentional. And that should now teach me, because of the Gzeir Shava, that applies also to testimony. That only if he takes the oath unintentionally, that he doesn't realize that it's false, then that's when he's going to bring the carbon. But if it's intentional, then no. And I'll learn that via pikadon from Me'ila. There's a difference between intentional and unintentional. So now the Gemara says, Lachikas v'rachmana le'edos gabi shvuos piti. I'm on top of 35, which is today's page. That's why when it talks about the oath, it puts it in the paragraphs which are discussing Shavuos Pita, someone that takes an oath of expression, and also someone that makes impure the temple. By all of them it says, it's concealed from him. And over here it doesn't say Benelam that it's concealed from him. it seems like we end off that we have everything resolved, but we don't really have why they were laughing. We had like along the way we had some things, but in the end it seems like that Shimon is resolved. Okay. So what we have over here is that even though theoretically we could have learned that there's a difference between intentional and unintentional by testimony, we could have learned that from Pikadon. But the fact that the Torah doesn't say v'nelam, that it was concealed from him by the testimony, that overrides all of that. And that tells me that it really doesn't matter if it's intentional by the oath of testimony, he's still going to have to bring the sacrifice. Okay.
Oh.
What was the mockery? At the end, it seems like we resolved it. Maybe somewhere along the way, we accepted it. That, okay, even though we answered it up, but there was still good reason for them to maybe one of the things along the way was. Okay, Mashpia, there's a new Mishnah. Mashpia ni alechem, I'm administering an oath to you. So he's talking to witnesses now. If you don't come and testify, that so-and-so said he's going to give me 200 zuz. Here we had, in our family, we had this lady that used to drive a Volkswagen Beetle. One of the kids liked it, so my nephew anyway. She said, oh, when you learn to get a license, I'm going to give it to you. Anyway, many years later, he got a license. She was not giving it.
Yeah, because
she changed her mind.
They became valuable.
She changed their mind. So here, someone apparently had said, I'm going to give you 200 zuz. And it comes the time to get it. And the guy says, I don't know what you're talking about. So who was standing there? So he has two people that were standing there. He says, please come testify for me. That so-and-so said he's going to give 200 zuz. And he never gave it. Even if he really said that. And they're witnesses to it. And now they're denying that they know the testimony. They're still exempt. It has to be an actual claim. This is not a real claim. This is, he said that he would. But he could also say that, I said I would, I know, but I changed my mind. There's no, you can't hold him to that. It's not like he made a kinyan that it's going to be his and this. Supposed to be more careful, but it's not a claim in court. Mashpiyani aleichem, let's say he administers them an oath. If you guys would ever hear testimony or see witness testimony, or no testimony for me, you're going to come and testify. They're exempt. They should cut because he's giving the oath before they even have the testimony. Ahmad b'beis knesset, let's say, stood up in shul. And he says, Mashpiyani aleichem, I'm making an oath to you, to all of you, to the whole congregation. He must be the gabbai. That if you know testimony, that you'll come and testify for me. Everyone's exempt. You have to have designated the people that you're talking to. You can't administer an oath to everyone like in general like that. It has to be a specific person that you're demanding from that they come and testify.
But he's the one who's making.
I know, but that's a way that he's administering it to them, and he says everyone respond amen. Yeah. Rabbi Lipsker, Lava Shalom, with today's the Shleishim, he would have this like meeting, the town hall meeting, he would call it at Shalashadas. And he would say, everyone should this week should get another like 10 people to put on tefillin. Anyone disagree? Okay, if you don't disagree, then that means you're agreeing. Anyway, if you would disagree, stand up. Okay. He says to two people. Okay, it's more specific. Mashpiyani aleichem ish pleni. I'm making you and you swear. If you know testimony, that you'll come and testify. And they respond, we don't know testimony. And they really did. They really did know testimony. However, it was aid me aid. It was hearsay. It was one witness from another witness. They didn't actually witness it. They knew, but it wasn't direct. One of them was invalid witness. So they're exempt because that's not really testimony. No, knowing without seeing is when the person admits. Here, it's someone told them. Yeah, secondhand. Let's say it wasn't directly this we learned on Shavuos. Let's say someone did not, the plaintiff did not come directly to the witnesses to claim. He sent the messenger to go and to ask them to testify. Or it wasn't the plaintiff, it was the defendant that asked them to testify. Is exempt. It has to be from the plaintiff. Okay. Start in a brayso. Administer an oath. Back to the first case of the Mishnah. You don't know testimony that I'm making you swear that that you don't know testimony, or you would come if you knew testimony that so and so said that he's going to give me 200 zuz and he didn't give it. Maybe you should be obligated. It says in we'll sin for a verbal analogy. I've come to us just like by the pikadon, comparing it to the pikadon. There is a claim of money, and he's actually obligated. And so to over here, it has to be a claim of money, and there's an obligation, not just a claim of money with no obligation. Yeah, it can't just be he said he's going to. If in the future you're going to know testimony that you're going to come and testify. Maybe they should be obligated in this case as well, even though he's giving them the oath before they even witnessed testimony. And he hears the sound of the curse, which means he hears the oath is being administered. And he really was a witness. He did see, or he knows. It has to be that he witnessed it before the oath. Not where the oath is before the witnessing. The Gemara is going through each one of the cases of the Mishnah, and it's giving me a biblical source. If he stands up in shul and he says, "I'm making all of you swear," Shmuel says, even if the two witnesses that were there happened to be in the shul, but he didn't designate them.
If any of these people respond,
They would be exempt from they would be lying, but they wouldn't have to bring the sacrifice of Shavuos Eidos, which is a special sacrifice. So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious that if the witnesses weren't there, then why telling me the halacha? The chiddush is that the witnesses were there, and they swore falsely, and it's not counted. So obviously they were there. And it says, he's standing right next to them. It's as if he's talking to them. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that no, just because he's standing next to him doesn't mean that he's talking to them. He did not designate them. It's also taught in a brayso.
Wait, how did you get away with that? I thought you can't make, like we discussed in the wedding, you have two Aiden and everyone else, you're not Aiden. Here he's doing just the opposite. Telling everyone in the audience you're all Aiden.
Yeah. No, he's not doing that. What he's doing, he's saying that I'm administering an oath to the entire congregation that you don't know testimony, or else you have to come and testify. This is just. So this is like he's subpoenaing the entire congregation. Any one of you that knows testimony has to come. And there are two guys there that know the testimony, right. But because he didn't say you and you, so they don't have the halachas of that they have to come. They don't have those halachas. They're supposed to testify, and they lied and all of that, but the halachas of Shavuos Eidos doesn't apply. So No, a second, I'm in the middle. Wait, very lichted. Maybe if he says, whoever's standing here, maybe they should be exempt. And I guess like he points to them. If he's designating them, even without their names, but he's saying the ones that are standing right next to me, so then that would be considered a designation, and then they would be chayev. So it's just if there's no designation at all. If he tells two people, I'm making you swear. That if you know testimony, you should come and testify for me. And they know testimony, but it's just not firsthand. One of them is a relative, so he can't testify anyway. Maybe they should be obligated. If they don't testify, they carry their guilt. Someone that would be able to testify, and he doesn't, he's going to be guilty. If he sends it in the hands of a slave, he wants him to go and demand testimony from this other person. Maybe, or if the defendant is the one that's demanding the testimony, maybe witnesses should be obligated. If he doesn't testify, he'll carry his guilt. My Talmud, where do you get that from? That it can't be indirect, and it has to be the plaintiff, not the defendant. It says if he doesn't testify, he'll carry guilt. How does that tell me that it's only in this case? Rabbi Lazar says, is that what you have, Rabbi Lazar? I have an abbreviation. It says the word loy, which means he does not testify, but it has a vav in there. And loy with a vav means him. Loy with an aleph means no, if he does not. Im loy layagid, if to him he doesn't testify, v'nasavayne. Im lach layagid pater, but if he doesn't testify to someone else, then he's going to be exempt. So it's specific. That extra vav, usually it would just have, instead of having a vav, it would just have a chaylam dot above the letter, which makes the o sound, or the I sound, if you're Chabad. Because over here it has the vav, it's going to teach me only specifically for that person. Should we do the Mishnah? I should leave the Mishnah. This time tomorrow we'll teach. I may be tired.
Right.
Okay. To see everyone.
You talked about the two different kinds of, before you talked about the two different kinds of laws or whatever. One is in the upper court and the other one is down here in this court. And that you can't be punished because certain things are in the upper court.